To test myotomes C1 and C2, the examiner applies pressure to the forehead while stabilizing the trunk with one hand on the upper back. To test myotome C3 in the accessory nerve, the examiner places both hands above the patient's ears and applies a side flexion force, first testing one direction and then the other. To test myotome C4 as well as the accessory nerve, the examiner applies a downward force on the patient's shoulders. To test myotome C5, the examiner applies a downward force to the patient's humerus with both arms elevated about to 75 to 80 degrees in the scapular plane. To test myotome C6, the examiner applies a downward force on the patient's forearm to test the elbow flexors, followed by a test of the wrist extensors. To test myotome C7, the examiner applies an upward directed force to the patient's forearm, testing the elbow extensors, followed by a test of the wrist flexors. To test myotome C8, the examiner applies a resisting force to thumb extension. For myotome T1, the patient may abduct the fingers slightly, with the examiner isometrically adducting them. The examiner is looking for neurological weakness originating from nerve roots.